Okay, let's try this again. Let me go ahead and get the camera set up the way I'd like it. 1 second, guys. It crashed on me just now. Alright, maybe. Hold on, guys. Okay, looks like it's gonna work, maybe. But... Oh, hi. Hi, Erica. I just followed you. Thanks for joining, Erica, and everyone else. Welcome to... Goodness, I can't remember what week it is. Week 9, I think. I've been doing this for over 2 months now. Welcome to week 9 of my weekly Periscope sessions addressing any and all questions you may have about blindness and vision impairment. My name is Misty Dawn. I myself am legally blind. I have a little bit of vision, but not very much. And I'm also very familiar with the blind community, both online and, around the country and the state and around the world. Excuse me. So very well connected to the blind community. And so yeah, if you have any questions about blindness, vision impairment, any pressing question you've ever wanted to ask a blind person about how they do this or that, or about blindness generally, go ahead and ask it. You can go and put your questions in the comments section as you would normally. I use a speech software on my phone to read the comments, so you don't have to worry about that. Getting a lot of joiners this week. That's awesome. Hi, guys. So yeah, just put your questions in the comments section. I will be very willing to answer any questions you may have about blindness and vision impairment as a blind person myself. Or more specifically, as a person with very, very low vision. As you can see, I do have glasses, but and they help a little bit. But my vision is still very limited. I do use a white cane, and I do use very, very large print and high contrast. But I also have some experience with people who use guide dogs, who use Braille and things like that. Again, because I know a lot of other blind folks. And so, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them here. Put them in the comments section, and I will be able to, as I said, read them with my speech software. So, sorry, there's a notification coming in there. So if there are any questions you've ever had about blindness, any pressing questions, put them in the comments.
Can you read Braille?
Yeah, okay, can I read Braille? I can, although, as I say, I mainly read large print, about 4 times magnification, if that makes sense to you guys, if you can kind of visualize that. I also use high contrast, white text on a black background. So most of the time when I read print, it's on a computer so that I can change the print size and the contrast for me to read it more easily. Although, I do know Braille. I learned it not long ago, in fact, through a correspondence course put on by the Hadley School for the Blind out of Winnetka, Illinois. Because I thought I might lose some more vision, and I thought I should go ahead and learn Braille in case that ever happens. And, my condition is degenerative, and so I may in fact lose vision over time, and I have lost some over time already, but I can still read print. But yeah, if there's not large print available, I can read Braille. If there's no large print or speech or whatever, or if it's just not convenient to read large print or speech, I do use Braille. But again, I mainly use large print, high contrast, as I say. So, yeah, like I said, I do have some vision. Any follow-up on that? I hope that answers your question, or any other questions from you or from anyone else?
How long did it take for you to learn that?
To learn Braille? I expect that's what you're asking. A good amount of time. I did a lesson a week, just about, I think. And I'm trying to remember how many lessons there were in this particular course. Oh, well, there was Braille 1 and Braille 2. There were, like, several different course levels, too. And I think I did all 3 of them. I think there were 3 of them. And I did it over a couple of years, I recall. And it is harder for people, in case you're curious, it is harder for people who learn Braille later in life to learn it, just because as you get older, your fingers become a little more calloused, you become a little less sensitive in your fingers. And so it can be a little more difficult, and it was a little more difficult, I think, for me, because I learned it later in life. I think it's been about 5-10 years now since I took those courses. But again, for me, it was still quite late in life. So yeah, it was not really difficult because I've always had a knack for languages and things of that sort. So learning it wasn't that difficult. It was just my fingers being sensitive to it, right? As I said, which was kind of a difficulty. Now, most people who read Braille, have one or two fingers that are really sensitive to it compared to the other fingers. And for me, that was, one second, guys.
Fighters, did you use to see? What is your condition?
Okay, let me complete that real quick. I was going to say, so this finger here, the pointer, for me, on the left hand, is the most sensitive, and so that's how I read Braille primarily when I read it. I'm sorry, I'm spacing your question now because I was rather distracted there. So go ahead and throw that up there again. I think you had asked what my condition is and how long I've had it. I was born blind or visually impaired, more precisely. The condition is called Leber's congenital amaurosis. It's a genetic condition. Basically what it means is where my retinal cells, I have all of my retinal cells, but they're not all formed correctly. And so that means I don't get as much light in my eyes as I could. I also have optic atrophy, which is often connected with Leber's, which means my optic nerve is shorter and smaller than it should be. And so it's basically, as I understand, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm not probably, don't quote me on everything I say here, but as I understand the condition, optic atrophy basically is where it causes information not to get transmitted quite right to the brain, visual information, right? So if I see, I'm watching a movie or whatever, my eyes may pick up a lot of the action, but my brain can't make a lot of sense of it, right? So I also have Ehl's disease, which seems to be unrelated. It developed later in my life, which is I have blood vessels that hemorrhage in my eyes, and I had to have those blood vessels sealed with a laser surgery. Took away some of my peripheral vision, but that was kind of a necessary evil, to seal those blood vessels. I also have color deficiency.
J_that_Hankins joined.
Thanks, guys, for joining. We're getting more folks, which is awesome. What was I saying? Sorry about that. I'm terrible at not getting back from tangents. In the classroom, I have to watch that, too. I am a certified Latin teacher. But anyway, color deficiency, which is where I may be able to see... I can see colors, but they're kind of distorted in my vision, so I might see purple as blue, or orange as pink or red. Black is a dark navy blue, right? So that's color deficiency. Now that typically occurs in males, and the Ehl's disease typically occurs in non-Caucasians. So don't ask me why those two hit me. My eyes were actually put into a medical journal several years ago because what I have in combination is so rare. So go figure, right? If that answers your question, that's great. If you have a follow-up, go ahead and throw that in there. And if there are any other questions from you or anyone else, feel free to ask. Put them in the comments section. For those who just joined, I do use speech software to read the questions on Periscope here. Okay, so I've got Twitter notifications coming in. Apologies, guys. Any questions about blindness or vision impairment? Anything you've been dying to ask a blind person or a visually impaired person about blindness, vision impairment? How do we do this or that, or how does blindness affect this or that about our lives, right? Any other questions that you have about blindness or vision impairment, feel free to ask them. Don't be shy. Go ahead and throw them at me. I'll answer them as best I can. Excuse me. Again, put them in the comments section down there, and my speech software will read them. And by the way, if I miss any of your questions, just put them in there again. I just may not have noticed them or seen them. Again, obviously I am visually impaired, so... A second.
Fighters, are there cures on the horizon?
It depends on the condition. Leber's, there have been some medical advancements. I'm not going to get into everything here because it gets a little technical, but there have been computer chips that have been implanted in people with retinal conditions like mine that allowed them to see some light, I believe, and maybe even a little bit of color, maybe some shapes. But again, that is actually still very limited, and that's about the extent of what people have been able to see with those implants at this point. And so I already have that level of vision to begin with, even right now. So that wouldn't really benefit me, as I understand it, at this point. Excuse me. But again, I don't sit around thinking about cures all the time, right? I live my life. I live a very fulfilling life. You wouldn't believe what a fulfilling life you can lead as a blind person, even with a significant vision impairment, because of all the technology that exists today. That's a huge help to us. And so, again, that's not something I think about all the time. I mean, I look into it here and there, but I just, it's not something I'm always aware of. But, oh my goodness, when am I going to be cured, right? I live with what I have. and I don't mope around about it. Like I said, live a fulfilling life, and I think about other things besides vision impairment, daily. So I have other interests. I have other pursuits that I engage in. So yeah, I mean, it's possible that within my lifetime there may be a cure, if you will, for Libras, or at least more and better treatments for it. But yeah, it's not something that's like top concern for me. Again, being born, with a vision impairment, it's I've never experienced what it's like to see perfectly, and so it's not something I really miss, right? And so in a way, it's a bit of a blessing to be born blind, because you really don't know necessarily what you're missing. From that perspective anyway, you might argue that it's actually a little better, as opposed to someone who's gone blind later in life. They realize what they lack, and sometimes they can get really depressed, at least, when they first go blind. But again, when someone goes blind and, all that, they may be depressed at first, but once they find out, if they have the appropriate resources, once they find out how fulfilling a life they can live as a blind person, a lot of them get out of that depressive mood very, very quickly. And, they learn to adapt and learn what they can do. Still, blindness is not a death sentence, people. It really isn't. You just have to learn to do things differently. You may have to give up some things. Certainly I can't fly a plane, right? Even though I do have an interest in aviation, I'm not gonna try flying a plane anytime soon. But it's you can still live a fulfilling life even with vision impairment. So again, I hope that answers your questions so far. Again, if you have any follow-ups, you or anyone else have any follow-ups on what I've said, feel free to put them in the comments section. For those who just joined, my speech software will read the comments. And if you have any other questions about blindness or vision impairment, feel free to put them in the comment section as well. Excuse me. So by the way, so folks that are joining me for the first time, I do this every week. This time, same day, same time, Thursdays, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. I usually go for a half an hour. And so, if you want to continue following me here, feel free to follow me on Periscope.
Fighters, you are a positive inspiration. I'm impressed.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. Inspiration, a lot of blind people and a lot of disabled people hear that a lot. I mean, and we appreciate the thought behind it. We really do. But a lot of times we think it can kind of be a knee-jerk response of the able-bodied to our situation. A lot of times that makes us feel more different than we want to feel when we're called inspirational, quote unquote. We really want to be treated as much like anyone else as possible. And so while we appreciate the thought behind saying, "Oh, you're inspirational," we do what we have to do. And it's not something, we're not going around thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be an inspiration today." Right? So, it's a little bit off-putting to some of us. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but I'm just putting it out there. When able-bodied people call us an inspiration all the time, it can be a little off-putting because, like I said, it's, we want to be treated normally. We don't want to be seen just for our vision impairment. We want to be seen for what we can do, outside of that, despite that, whatever you want to say. And we want to be seen for other personality aspects and other aspects of ourselves, what our interests are, and things like that. But we appreciate it, but it can be a little bit tedious at times to be called inspirational every day. Right? Again, not trying to be mean, but it's true, and I think a lot of other blind people would say the same thing. At least those I've talked to, and I've talked to many. For some odd reason, we tend to know each other. I think it's because it's a small community. We tend to know each other both in real life and online. There's a very large blind community on the internet. We use magnification software on our computers and speech software to help us navigate online. And so, there's a really great, really awesome blind community online. So yeah, as I was saying really quickly, feel free to follow if you want to get alerts on these every week. Now, I do these, like I said, same time, same day, weekly, for half an hour. I try to keep it to a half an hour anyway. Sometimes I go a little under, sometimes I go a little over, of course, depending on the questions and all of that and what I have to talk about. But feel free to follow me to get alerts when I do these. I also do other periscopes, less serious and deep ones. I do more mundane periscopes throughout the week sometimes, although not regularly. It's not predictably like this one. So yeah, feel free to follow for those and for these weekly Periscope sessions. Feel free to heart this. Heart it up. We need to get more and more people watching this. I appreciate a lot of the folks that joined this week. Last couple of weeks, I really haven't gotten a lot of people, so I'm glad to see the numbers picking up a little bit this week. So feel free to, like I said, heart this, share it with your friends, put it on Facebook, on Twitter, share it with your fellow Periscopers. We need to keep the numbers up. And feel free again to ask questions. Any questions you may have about blindness, and encourage other people to join me as well and ask their questions. Also, by the way, I do archive these Periscope sessions on YouTube. And so I'm at the same username on YouTube as I am here. So just look for my channel on YouTube. Excuse me. And so when you go to my YouTube channel, just look for the playlist that says Questions About Blindness, the Periscope sessions. And that'll be where I've archived these broadcasts. I also do a more demonstrative podcast, a video podcast, if you will, where I demonstrate a lot more. It's less lecture and more demonstration. If this kind of lecture format isn't your cup of tea, you can go to my same YouTube channel and you can look under the playlist called Through My Eyes. And I do a lot more demonstrating how I use technology as a blind person, for example, and how that technology works. I show you a lot of that stuff. So if you want to look at that, if that's, this isn't your cup of tea, go and check that out. If you like this as well, stick around here, of course, until I'm done with this, but jump on YouTube, check out previous broadcast here, and also my Through My Eyes video podcast. It's pretty awesome as well. So, all kinds of house cleaning out of the way there. Any other questions about blindness or vision impairment from anyone who's on here? Or any follow-up questions on what I've already said? Any burning questions you have about blindness, ask me as a blind person. Feel free, don't be shy. I'll take any and all questions about blindness and vision impairment. So just put them in the comments section there on the lower left, and I will do my best to answer them. And also, by the way, if you want to invite your fellow Periscopers to join right now, feel free to do that. Again, we need to keep the numbers up, and so I can kind of keep doing this each week. Any other questions about blindness or vision impairment? Opening it up right now. All right. Well, while I'm waiting, I usually do a filler topic every week. Some topic related to blindness or vision impairment to kind of fill the time as I'm waiting for questions. And if I say something that sparks a question, feel free just to jump in and interrupt and put a question down there on the lower left. Or if you come up with another question, even that's not related to my sort of filler topic, if you will, feel free to put that down there, and I'll stop what I'm talking about, and I'll answer that question. So, Garrett Klein, I don't know if you're watching this right now, but I will look at your Twitter stuff later. I don't know if you're asking me questions through Twitter right now, but the Periscope question and answer thing is accessible, so go ahead and put the questions down here in Periscope. I try to take them on Periscope only when I'm doing these sessions. So, but if you have asked questions on Twitter, if for whatever reason that's the only way you can do it, I'll get to them next week. I'll write them down and I'll get to them next week. So, there you are. Right, any other questions before I move on to my weekly filler topic? Any other questions about blindness? Put them in the comments. And again, feel free to heart this and share this. Let's keep the numbers high each week. Well, for me anyway. That's a bit of a tangent, but it's one thing about now that they have the separate section for only people that you follow. When Periscope just had the global list, anyone could see anyone's Periscopes, and now that they have the follow list, you get fewer people when you broadcast. So yeah, let's try to keep the numbers up and try to promote this as much as we can. All right. So I was actually, it's hard for me to come up with filler topics every week, actually. But just before I got on here, I was thinking about talking about some controversies that exist within the blindness community. Okay, a lot of people think the blind and quote-unquote the deaf and quote-unquote the disabled are, one second.
Not a munch. You're doing really well. Speaking as a totally blind person here.
Yes, hi, Erica, yeah. Thank you so much, I appreciate it. And I'm actually really glad that Periscope is at least somewhat accessible to blind folks, certainly the comments section, when you're typing it anyway. You're quite welcome. If you're a blind person watching this, feel free to do this on your own Periscopes like this. This is not a proprietary idea. This is not something I'm jealously guarding as my own idea, right? Excuse me. Feel free to do one of your own things, but please try not to make it at 5:30 on Thursday. Because I do like to get a lot of followers on mine as well, a lot of viewers. But, do your own little questions about blindness session, feel free to borrow my idea. I think we need more people doing this. We need more people to be open and to educate the sighted community about blindness. And, feel free to take my idea and use it as your own. Excuse me. Because I see you're on Periscope now, so that might be an ideal way, Erica, to use your Periscope platform, and other blind people as well. All right, so controversies within the blind community. As I say, a lot of people think that we are that the blind, quote unquote, and the deaf and the disabled, all that. A lot of people think that, like a lot of other minority groups, that they have this misconception that we are an autonomous group, that we all have the same opinions, that we all have the same ideas, the same thoughts, and that couldn't be further from the truth, okay? We don't all have the same opinions and ideas and thoughts about blindness and how we should be treated as blind people, or how we should interact with the world or be accommodated as blind people, right? For instance, we have very different ideas on those subjects. In fact, the blind community really started out as one major organization among ourselves. We actually formed an official organization back in the 30s, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks. And the organization was called the National Federation of the Blind.
Not a munch. Getting the nail on the head. Wow.
Thank you, yes. The organization was called the National Federation of the Blind, at least here in the United States. I'm talking here in the U.S. There are other organizations formed of blind people in other countries as well, but here in the U.S. there was one major organization of blind people that began in, I believe, the 30s, called the National Federation of the Blind, made up of blind people speaking and advocating for themselves. And I think it was in the 60s, there were a lot of controversies, including controversies about blindness-related issues that caused a split within the organization. And so we are now two major organizations, the National Federation of the Blind and the American Council of the Blind, which these two organizations have really very differing philosophies in a lot of ways. Now, again, correct me, blind folks who are watching me, if I'm wrong in this assessment. I'm not, trying to be wrong intentionally. By the way, sighted folks and able-bodied folks, there really are a lot of sore spots between the two organizations. I will be quite frank on issues like this. But, for instance, the National Federation of the Blind does tend to be a little more aggressive in advocating for accommodations, more forceful. Some people on the other side might argue militant. Again, I think it's just a more forceful approach, and I tend to lean more toward that approach myself. We tend to be a little more aggressive in advocating for ourselves and accommodations, and the NFB does anyway, and so do I, but personally. One major difference with the NFB and the ACB is that the NFB tends to want to advocate for a self-accommodation approach, as I understand it. In other words, blind people should develop within our community, accommodations for ourselves. We shouldn't necessarily always have to rely on the sighted world to help accommodate us or to accommodate for us. Whereas the American Council of the Blind, or ACB, tends to feel that the able-bodied community should bear the responsibility primarily to accommodate us. And also they tend to take a less aggressive approach, or less forceful, if you will, approach to advocating. They tend to want to work more peacefully with the able-bodied community and more sweetly, gently, if that's a good way to put it. Again, major differences. Now, these kinds of issues are what blind people like to call philosophy of blindness issues. So, who should accommodate us? what should we expect from society in terms of how they interact with us and approach us? Issues like that are really major issues of debate and even contention within the blind community. They can become rather political. They have become political, actually. And as I understand it, I mean, that's somewhat of an issue in other disability communities and minority communities in general. But I found it particularly divisive within the blind community. Now, I may be wrong on that. I don't know. I've not had a lot of experience with other minority communities so much. But, there are a lot of debatable issues. Whether the blind community should be considered a blind culture, like the deaf community considers itself a deaf culture. Some would argue that because of certain ways that we interact with each other when we're around each other, that differ from ways that we interact with the sighted population, some would argue that that would constitute a culture. Whereas others say that, culture is intricately tied up with language, and we don't have our own separate language, and so we shouldn't be considered a culture. Now, that's a less divisive issue, of course, but that is something that we debate. Again, sort of another philosophy of blindness issue. I tend to think we're more of a community, because, again, we don't have a particular language, like a different language like the deaf community does, with ASL. Now, Braille, we generally don't consider that another language. We consider it helps if you're good at languages, but it's really a different way to write print letters, right? That makes sense? And so a lot of us don't consider it a separate language. And so I don't know if I'd count Braille as constituting a culture, blind culture, right? So issues like that. There are other issues as well, more specific issues that involve these more general issues relating to blindness that are matters of debate and discussion and have been for a long time. Blind people are not one autonomous group. We have differences of opinion as to how we should go about things or how society should accommodate us. That's actually what creates some difficulty when these two major organizations that are split on a lot of issues try to advocate in the political sphere, for instance, lobbying Congress for this or that, right? One organization is saying one thing and the other organization very often contradicts that thing. So we really do need to reunite and speak with a unified voice. A lot of people don't think that's possible, especially because a lot of older folks are still involved in those two organizations, folks that were there during the split of those two organizations, and that are, again, bear some very deep scars from that, believe it or not. And so a lot of people don't think we're going to really be able to reunify until these people, I hate to sound harsh, but until these people either leave the organization or die. Whatever comes first. I know it sounds harsh, but that's probably, a lot of people think, the only way we're going to reunify. My idea has always been we can reunify under one organizational structure, but we could have sort of a party system, a two-party system, an AFB party and an ACB party, and an NFB party, where, you could vote on certain issues, and whatever the majority opinion is, or however you want to make a majority, three-fourths or filibuster, whatever, make it like a congressional setup. Whatever the majority opinion is, then that's the position we're going to take as an organization. But yet being united. Two parties, one organization. That's something that I have been a huge advocate of, and I've tried to kind of get the idea out there. So blind folks, I know this is a little tangential for this particular Periscope, but if you like this idea, talk it up. I know I have. I would love to see our organizations unify again, because, strength in numbers, right? And a unified voice is always better than a divided voice, right? Sighted folks who are watching, these are the kind of issues we deal with. Again, we're not one autonomous, group that thinks in the same way and does in the same way. We don't even do things in the same way. Different people have different levels of vision, and so certain things work for one person that don't work for another. Some of us use canes, some of us use guide dogs, some of us read large print, some of us read Braille, some of us prefer speech, and so when we're reading, and so we're a very diverse group. The blind community is a very, very diverse group. And again, a lot of different levels of vision in there too. You can see I have glasses. They do help me a little bit, still, I use a white cane because my vision is still that limited, right? So yeah, we're definitely not an autonomous group. Right. So, I think I pretty well covered in a very general way this particular topic of issues of debate within the blindness community. So, are there any other questions relating to what I just said, or any follow-ups you've had to other questions you've seen on here already? Are there any new questions about blindness or vision impairment that you'd like to pose to me, a blind person? Ask me directly. That's another thing. If you see a blind person, feel free to talk to them. Talk to them directly. Don't ask the sighted person that may or may not be with them questions that you want to ask them. Ask us directly. Talk to us directly. This is another thing that I want to promote on these Periscope sessions is, if you have questions about blindness or anything at all, just ask a blind person directly. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. So, again, any other questions that you have relating to blindness or vision impairment? I'm throwing it out there again. For any questions, if you just joined, if you have questions about blindness or vision impairment, put them in the comments section down there in the lower left. I will be able to read those questions with my speech software that I have on my phone. So don't worry about that. Any other questions about blindness or vision impairment that you may have? Anything you've been dying to ask a blind person about blindness or vision impairment? Anything at all? I'll give you a couple minutes, or maybe a couple seconds, more like, but, excuse me, I'm getting a bit hoarse. Been talking too long already. Any other questions about blindness or vision impairment? Going once? Going twice? Actually, I think it's getting to be about time. I wish, I don't know about people with vision who use Periscope. Let me know, if you know this, but for people using VoiceOver, when I bring up a broadcast, it doesn't show the clock above my broadcast. When I use VoiceOver to try to read the clock disappears on top of where the status bar is on my iPhone. Let me see if it's there right now. Nope. So I usually bring out a separate clock, but my iPod battery is dead, and so I don't have a clock nearby that I can look at. Excuse me, but I think we're getting close to time. Oh yeah, by the way, I did say a clock that I can look at. Actually, it is a clock that reads aloud to me. But again, a lot of blind people, very colloquially and, sort of idiomatically use words like see and look, right? Even in situations where they're not actually looking or seeing. For instance, we do say, I saw a movie last night. Or we do say, see you later. I think I mentioned that before. Because, watching a movie, right, is not just the visual element. You have the sound also. So, we use the word see just like anyone else would, seeing a movie. And when you say see you later, you're not just saying that, oh, I'm going to physically see you at a later date. What you mean is I will have contact with you later, right? I'll see you, I'll hear you, I'll visit you. So we use that in a colloquial, everyday way also. It's not a bad thing to tell a blind person, I'll see you later. That's not something we get offended about, right? Or telling a blind person, asking him, did you see that movie? Or saying, oh, I saw this in such movie, right? Doesn't offend us, right? Just feel free to use those terms. It doesn't offend us. It doesn't make us sad or something, right? We deal with what we have. We're not sitting around moping all day in a rocking chair, right? We live lives, very full lives. And, excuse me, my voice is getting hoarse. We live very full lives, and we don't sit around moping all the time, okay, about our situation. So don't feel like, again, by saying see, that you're going to hurt our feelings, right? Right. Any other questions? I open it up again. Really great questions so far, by the way. Feel free to ask them. Sorry, there's a fly in here I was hearing. Any other questions? And by the way, if I missed yours this week, happen to miss yours, feel free to put it in the comments again. Also, if I missed it, I will try to answer it next week. I'll look at this Periscope broadcast later, and I will see if I missed anything, and if I have, I'll answer these questions next week. And if anyone's tweeted me questions on Twitter, I will get to those next week as well. I think Garrett may have. Garrett Klein, if you're listening. So, yeah, again, feel free to follow. Feel free to heart this and share this with your fellow Periscopers. Share it on Twitter. Put it on Facebook. Talk about it with your friends. We always need to keep our numbers up. And so, yeah, feel free to do all that sort of thing. Look at my YouTube channel. You can see previous broadcasts. I talk about other blindness-related subjects, and I've answered other questions. I've done this for a little over 2 months now. So I've put all of those up on my YouTube channel under the, as I said, under the playlist questions about blindness, the Periscope sessions. Also, feel free to check out my other more visual, demonstrative video podcast. If this kind of lecture format isn't your thing, that video podcast is on my YouTube channel. It is called, again, Through My Eyes. And also feel free to follow me on Twitter. I just mentioned Twitter earlier. I'm at the same username on Twitter as I am here. So feel free to follow that. I tweet about blindness things, yes, of course. But I also tweet about my other interests. If you want to get to know me, I know, for something more than just being a blind person, right? I tweet about my other interests. I tweet about classical civilization, Latin, Greek, and all that. I tweet about space exploration, which is also an interest of mine. I tweet about aviation. You see, I don't know if you can see them on this, but I've got my pi symbol earrings on here, right? So I'm big into science stuff as well. So yeah, feel free to follow me on Twitter if you'd like. Again, same username as I am here. As I say, I do these Periscope sessions, as I call them, at the same time every week, Thursday nights, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and I usually try to go for half an hour. So if you want to, feel free to join me again. Feel free to join me each week if you want, to ask other questions or just to listen in. I invite both blind and sighted people to join. If you're a blind person, feel free to ask questions as well, ask questions you think a sighted person might have, because there may be some sighted viewers out there that may be shy to ask a question. So, if you think that, sighted people may have this or that question, or if it's a common question sighted people have, and if you're blind, feel free to put it in the comments section and ask it to me anyway, and I'll go ahead and answer it. So, all right, I think I'm going to go ahead and jump off of here because I think we're about making time. And I pretty well covered everything I wanted to cover. I'm going to open it up one last time for any questions you may have on blindness or vision impairment. Feel free to ask me, a blind person, directly. So, any other questions before I jump on off of here for the night? Any other questions on blindness or vision impairment? Put them in the comments section, and my speech software will read them. Any other questions? Going once. Going twice. All right. Well, I think we're going to jump off of here. It was a great session this week. Thanks for all the questions that you guys contributed. Feel free to join me next week and in the coming weeks. Again, promote this and share this with your friends. Blind people, feel free to borrow my idea, and do these kinds of periscopes of your own. But, of course, at a different time than I'm doing them. Right? So, all right then. Hope you enjoyed this Periscope session this week on questions about blindness, and feel free to join me next week. I will talk to you guys later. Bye, guys, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Stop broadcast.